The Rams' playoff hopes are on the line on Sunday against the Seahawks, and we've got 10 keys to victory, plus a rookie that could have more opportunities this Sunday. That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramley, and welcome to the episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available over on YouTube, and we're so close to 10,000 subscribers, so do us a huge favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, hit that like button, and let us know. What is your predictions for this week 11 matchup, the season online? Do you got the Rams winning? You want to throw out some scores down below? My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DMAC_LA. I've been covering LA sports for over a decade. The Lakers for SI, the Dodgers for Dodgers Nation, now the Rams for Locked On. And as always, I'm joined by the Rams pre-half and post-game show host for the Rams flagship radio station, ESPN 710 LA. He's in his 8th season covering your Los Angeles Rams. The People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him at Travis Rogers. And on today's episode, we got keys to victory, the path to a Rams win. Can they keep their season alive? Also, could they be an improbable playoff team? We got injury updates so much on this show. But first, this episode of Locked On Rams is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase Locked On NFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Now, Trev, first thing before you kind of get into this matchup is just simply put, the season is on the line. Right now, the Rams have a 14% chance of making the playoffs. If they lose on Sunday, it is over.
14% sounds much higher than I think that it is, right? 14% sounds about 13% higher than I would have given them heading into this point in the season with a 3-6 record. You got to try, right? You got to try. You got to try to give your best effort, your best foot forward, however you want to say it, for the guys that are out there playing, because until you're out of it, you're not out of it. And that's kind of just like the golden rule of the NFL, that until you're out, you keep competing like crazy. And I expect that's what the Rams are going to do. They've got an uphill climb. The Seattle Seahawks have a lot on the line as well. They're still fighting for the division championship in the NFC West. The Rams a little bit less so, even if they do have a mathematical path to the playoffs, a realistic one. It's far more difficult to find. But Sean McVay's a great coach. Sean McVay runs a great football team. He builds great culture. So I expect them to come out there swinging. I expect them to come out there and throw their best punch. And, the Seattle Seahawks are always a good matchup for the Rams.
Yeah, you look at the Seahawks team, too. If they lose this game, you got the Cowboys, you got the Eagles. They still play the 49ers twice. This is a very important game for them. This Rams team, if they're just able to beat the teams left on their schedule that have losing records, some winnable games in there, if you just find a way to win those games. Also, a backup quarterback there. You're playing against the Cleveland Browns. If you find a way to win the Seahawks, you win this matchup, and you find a way to beat the Saints, which is possible, that is really the path to the playoffs. Yes, it is highly unlikely. This is not a good NFC. You still have the Vikings still trying to have a rebirth with Kirk Cousins out. And it's going to be a very interesting game on Sunday, because I hope we see a desperate Rams team, a team that's going out there to try to give it everything they have, a last-ditch effort to just keep this season alive. But let's be honest, they can kiss those playoff chances goodbye if they lose on Sunday. Now, you look at this matchup, first thing you have to start with is the coaching matchup, because you look at Pete Carroll, you look at Sean McVay. It's going to be really special on Sunday to see Sean McVay and his son at SoFi Stadium, of course, his son being Pete Carroll.
I knew that there was going to be a wrinkle in there somewhere. Yeah, look, this has been a good matchup for the Rams over the years. This is oddly even kind of predates Sean McVay. That this goes back to the Jeff Fisher era, where the Rams, even when the Rams were not a particularly good team, that they would find a way to beat Seattle, who's been a very good team under Pete Carroll over the last decade and a half or so, or however long he's been there. What I would like to say, it's funny, I was talking about this on my radio show the other day. This week 11, in 2018, 5 years ago, was when the Rams and the Chiefs played that Monday Night Football game where the Rams beat the Chiefs 54-51, one of the great games in NFL history, one of the great Monday night games in NFL history. Jared Goff threw 4 touchdowns. Patrick Mahomes threw 6. It was an incredible night. And at the end of the night, you're thinking to yourself, did Sean McVay break the NFL? They were scoring 30 points. They only scored fewer than 30 points 3 times all season. They were putting up points like crazy. Now, again, you had Robert Woods. You have, Brandon Cooks. You have all these guys that are incredibly talented players, to be sure. Todd Gurley was still a part of the team right there. But it felt like Sean McVay could do whatever he wanted to do offensively. That is incredibly creative. What I would love to see on Sunday afternoon at SoFi Stadium is a Rams offense that looks creative, a Rams offense that looks different than what we've seen through the first 9 weeks, and just open the bag, try some stuff that maybe you haven't tried a lot. Let's see some new things. I know that Sean McVay is fairly limited in what he can do based on his personnel, but at this point, what difference does it make? Let's try some things. Let's get creative with it. That's what I'm looking forward to. The Seahawks, like I mentioned before, like you mentioned with Pete Carroll and his son, it is a good matchup that he is able to find things that work against Seattle, and I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, you mentioned the record, Sean McVay 9-5 against Pete Carroll, against that Seattle Seahawks team, and you have to feel good about that, especially coming off a bye, an extra week to prepare, and on top of that, you're getting as healthy as you've been in weeks. Ernest Jones, he's going to be back. One thing about this Seattle Seahawks team, when they run the ball effectively, they win football games. Now, a lot of times they abandon the run. It feels like every team out there wants their team to run the football more. That's the case with Seattle. It's hurt Geno Smith in the passing game, so Ernest Jones being back is big. Rob Havenstein adding another veteran offensive lineman to protect Matthew Stafford is going to be critical. In the Rams' 30-13 win in week 1, Stafford didn't get sacked once. He was clean. He could have made a sandwich back there with how much time he had to throw. They did not get after him. So can you keep Stafford clean? Can you stop their run game? Can you go out there and get a victory like we see in week 1? Now, it's going to be very different. I want to say they're probably not going to lose their offensive tackles like we saw. They're still missing one. We also got Devin Witherspoon. Devin Witherspoon is an absolute stud for them. He can play in the slot. He can play on the outside. He's been incredible as a rookie. Also, Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's starting to really turn the corner and starting to show some life. So it's a very different Seattle team than we saw during week 1.
It is, and I think Smith and Jigba is a big part of that. I think that he's somebody that the Rams may have a little trouble matching up with. You know that you're going to have Metcalf. You know that you got Lockett. You know it's got some other guys there. But I want to go back to something you mentioned about what the Rams have on their side as far as players coming back, and that's Rob Havenstein. The Rams' offensive line is on its best day average, and they don't have a lot of good days if Rob Havenstein isn't there. Getting him back is huge. That he is kind of the anchor of this offensive line. He kind of sets the tone right there. He is one of those big, nasty guys that you and I have talked about that the Rams, I think are trying to trend towards. A guy like Steve Avila, obviously, Havenstein certainly fits into that category as well. And it just gives you the hope that Matthew Stafford will get just enough time to do it. You brought up, I think, the most important stat from week 1. I know he threw for over 300 yards. I know that he didn't throw any touchdowns. He didn't throw any interceptions. But the 0 is the big one, the 0 sacks that I remember coming in on Monday morning after that game and thinking to myself, how did the Rams not give up a single sack with an offensive line that had as many question marks coming into the year as they did? I don't know if they have to throw a shutout like that this week against Seattle again, but they got to come close to it, because if Stafford doesn't have time or if he's taking hits, it's a wrap.
It's absolutely critical. And their offensive line, they've had 7 different combinations the last 9 weeks. They're basically the 2022 Rams over there with their offensive line issues. But this offensive line for the Rams, other than Dotson in the run game, and Dotson, he's been the most consistent. He's been fantastic this season. Avila as a rookie, he's played really well. But for the most part, they've been bad. I mean, 30 sacks for this Seahawks team that's tied for 5th. They're 10th in QB hits. If you look at the Rams, they're 42.2 QB pressure rate. That's one of the highest in the league. Stafford's been sacked 19 times. You got Mafi, you got Leonard Williams, you got dudes up front. They're going to try to get after it. If you look at the Rams offensive line, they're ranked 26 in pass blocking. 26. They've allowed 116 total pressures. So 14 sacks. I mean, you look at that offensive line, they need to step up and have a big day. You got to give Matthew Stafford time to throw, because that's what we saw. That's what we usually see against the Seahawks team, right? Exploiting the zone, getting big completions over the middle. He was fantastic in week 1. Can he replicate that in this much-needed Week 11 matchup? Hopefully that'll be the case. But coming up next here on Locked On Rams, Travis, we got more key matchups, and we're going to do a segment, Show Me Something. Which Rams need to step up and show us something here in Week 11 to keep the playoff hopes alive? That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams.
All right, so PrizePicks is the most fun I've had doing daily fantasy sports literally ever. You got to put the PrizePicks app on your phone. Here's what I did last night, right? The Lakers were playing. Lakers were playing the Sacramento Kings. De'Aaron Fox, I took more with LeBron, and it hits. This is how easy it is. You pick 2 to 6 players, you look at the statistical projections, and you decide whether you like more or less. Get it right. You can win up to 25 times your money. It's awesome. You could even cross sports, right? You can put basketball together with football. For instance, Travis Kelce and LeBron James, 10.5 of 3-pointers made plus receptions. Do you like more or do you like less? That's PrizePicks, and you can win money up to 25 times your money. It is an incredibly good time. You can run your mouth a little bit to your friends. It's a blast. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match of up to $100. Let me tell you that again. The promo code is LockedOnNFL. It's LOCKEDONNFL. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use that LockedOnNFL code for a first deposit match of up to $100 and start having a ton of fun.
And we're off running here on Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And also a special shout out to those everyday listeners out there. We appreciate you watching every episode, listening to every episode. And just so you know, if you're not a part of that Everyday Listeners Club, you should absolutely join right now. Currently, membership is 100% free, and you won't miss a thing about your Los Angeles Rams. Now, Travis, here in a second segment, we're going to continue to break down this matchup. And a segment I'm calling Show Me Something. You've seen this around the NFL, and we're going to do a Rams edition of Show Me Something. And let's start with Matthew Stafford. You got to start with the QB. First thing I want to mention, the Athletics' Jordan Rodriguez, she posted on the X that Stafford looked to have his normal velocity and spin on the ball in the limited media showing from practice. This was during a rain practice session, so I think that makes it even more encouraging. I think the biggest question is, can he grip the football? It seems like he can. If that's the case, I think he has a chance to have a really solid day against the Seahawks team and give the Rams a chance to win.
I do too. And if he doesn't, then the chance is out the window. I think that the thumb is the big thing. The thumb is what kept him out against Green Bay. The thumb is the thing that we've been keeping our eye on the most. Keep in mind that the hip or whatever that leg injury is that he suffered against the Colts and was re-aggravated along the way is still something that I think is interesting too, because he can grip it and spin it and chuck it and do all the great Matthew Stafford things he wants. But kind of going back to what we were saying and kind of going back to something that the everydayers have heard us talk about ad nauseum since the beginning of the season, if he doesn't have time, he can have the greatest arm in the world. It doesn't matter. If guys aren't able to get open in a quarter of a second, sometimes it's not going to make much of a difference. You got to give him time because he's not going to make a bunch of guys miss. That's just not the sort of quarterback that he is. Give him a little bit of time. Let him do his thing with his arm. He can still make every throw on that field. But if he doesn't have that 2.5 seconds to do it, it doesn't make much of a difference.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, you keep him upright, it's going to change the game. He was sacked once in week 1, and you saw what he was able to do. You look at his career against the Seattle Seahawks with the Rams, he's a perfect 3-0, averaging 314.3 yards per game. The offense, they know how to move the football against Seattle. But I'm still going to tell him, going to still ask him to show me something, because this year, 8 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, an 82 rating. We know you have one of the best arms in the league still, but show us that you're even close to being 100%. Show us that you're still one of the best quarterbacks in the league when you got all your weapons, when you have an offensive line that's as good as it's going to be. Let's just be honest. So I'm hoping that he steps up and has a big day. I think Rob Havenstein being back is going to really help solidify this offensive line.
Find Cooper Kupp too, right? And I'm sure we're going to talk about him coming up in just a little bit.
There you go.
There comes a point where I get it. The protection's not perfect. I get it that maybe you don't have all of the weapons at your disposal, but There's a reason that you make 30, 40, 50 million bucks a year, and it's to fix some problems occasionally. And this is a good matchup like we've talked about. So fix some of those problems. This is not something that is impossible to do. It's very, very difficult, and you can't ask him to do it 50 times a game, but maybe 2 or 3 times here. Let's make a play out of nothing. That's something that the Rams really haven't had a lot of in a while, really going back to their Super Bowl season a couple of years ago. You're going to have to make chicken salad out of you-know-what every once in a while, and so far they haven't been able to do it.
Yeah, absolutely, Travis. You beat me to it. That's the next show me something, Cooper Kupp. We need to see Cooper Kupp step up for this offense. If you've seen Cooper Kupp, please return to SoFi Stadium before Sunday, because they're going to need him to step up in a big way. If you look at his body of work in the last few games, he's gone 3 straight games without 50 yards. His 2.32 yards per route ran the first 4 weeks after his return would be his lowest since 2020. He's not had over 5 receptions or gone over 50 yards in his last 3 games. I don't know what's up with Kupp. You saw Sean McVay. He talked to the media a few days ago talking about putting him in more favorable matchups and having an extra week to kind of game plan. I think that's going to help to see how you can feed Puka, how you can feed Kupp. I think some of this falls on Matthew Stafford to distribute the ball around, because Tutu Atwell, someone whose targets have gone down significantly since week 1, since the first part of the season. But Cooper Kupp needs to step up, because if you look at this offense, look at some of his advanced numbers, their EPA and things like that, the offense has been worse since he's returned. This team hasn't scored more than 21 points in the last 3 games. Cooper Kupp's going to need to make some big plays.
It hasn't looked right for a couple of weeks, right? And it looked pretty good in the first 2 games back, but after that, it really has not. And not only has he not looked great, but neither has Puka. And it felt like it was going to be an opportunity for them to kind of feed off one another, and that's not really what's happened at all. I think that the Rams are kind of at an inflection point with Cooper Kupp. It's hard to evaluate when the line isn't good, when you have a backup quarterback, he's coming back. He's only played, what have they played? He's only played 5 games this season. So it's not like he's had a ton of reps along the way, but this was somebody that was one of the best, if not the best wide receiver in football very, very recently. He hasn't looked anything like that. And it's time to kind of figure out, is it just a lull? Is it defenses doing something? Is it the matchups, like you mentioned with Sean McVay, that he hasn't put him in the right spots? I find that very hard to believe. Sean McVay has always been able to find a way to get Cooper Kupp in the right spots. Or is it the natural aging of a football player? There's a reason Jerry Rice isn't out there anymore. There's a reason Randy Moss isn't out there anymore. And I'm not saying that he's at an age of those guys, but it does happen. And when you've had 3 major injuries the way that Cooper Kupp has, it can't help but kind of gnaw at the back of your brain. Like, is this just a bad little stretch, or is this the beginning of a different type of player?
Yeah, it's going to be very telling, because I think you can give them the benefit of the doubt for a couple of weeks,
Sure.
But now it's starting to turn into a trend, right? If they continue to perform not to their standard, you're going to start having some questions. And then the next show me something, this one, a little hesitant about, but based on how great he's performed this season, Puka Nacua is someone who, is he injured? Is he far from 100%? You heard Sean McVay in the last couple of days talking about maybe there's a chance that he won't get to full 100% for the remainder of this season. He's dealing with some stuff. They kind of backtracked it a little bit. He has been dealing with a knee injury. He has been banged up. It's very understandable for a rookie during week 10, week 11 to start to hit a little bit of a rookie wall. But
Sure.
At the end of the day, the production hasn't really been there. Just 6 receptions on 75 yards his last 2 games. I want to see if these two can coexist consistently. We haven't seen since the Philly game both of them really get it together and produce on the same stage at the same time.
This is the official show of Puka Nacua. You were shopping for Puka shells way back in training camp.
I'm saving up.
That we both like him a lot. We both think that he's a really good player. But look, and I am not calling anybody's toughness into question. It's nothing like that. But if you're going to play, you're going to be evaluated on how you play, right? And there may be some explanations on he's got a knee or he's got this or that. And again, if he's hurting, and that's a whole new thing. But if you're going to go out there, we're going to judge whether or not you played well or not. And it's been a minute since he's looked like the guy that we saw through the first 6 games or so. Maybe it is the rookie wall. Maybe it is a nagging little injury. But again, if this is life in the NFL, nobody feels good in week 11. Nobody. It's just, this is how it goes. And the truly great ones find a way to get it done anyway. I'm optimistic that he can be a really good player in this league. He's shown it. I don't think that you can do what he did through the first part of the season and have it be a total flash in the pan. I think he's a really good football player. And there are a ton of extenuating circumstances, like we've talked about, the line, the quarterback, the everything, the lack of running game for a good chunk of the season, all of this stuff. But I'm with you, D-Mac. I think that I would really like to see Puka kind of pop back in again and have us be saying on Monday morning, wow, there's the Puka we saw in week 1 against Seattle. There's Puka we saw against San Francisco. That's the Puka we saw in Indianapolis against the Colts. Let's see that guy again, because we haven't seen him for a minute.
And you said it, Trav, if you can't run the football consistently, if you can't be a competent running team that can set up the play action, you're not going to be able to feature 2 receivers like Kupp, like Puka Nacua. Yes, they can coexist, but it's going to take some other moving parts to really have them thrive in this offense. So I agree with you 100%. You have to commit to that run. You have to find a way to get a competent running game to get those guys featured and produce on a level that we know they're capable of. But coming up in our next segment, we've got a rookie that I think I need to see something from him. I've got to show me something for a rookie, some other players, keys to victory, predictions, and more. That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams.
Let me ask you something. Is there anything better than being at home and watching football or basketball or whatever it is? Maybe you're a hockey fan. I'm a hockey fan. And not having to go get anything and just having the food delivered right to your front door? Is there, literally on earth, is there anything better than it's hot and it's ready and it's delicious and all that stuff? DoorDash, right? You can do this. You can order your pizza and your wings and your soda and your burgers, and you maybe just forgot something. Maybe you went to the store like, oh my gosh, I forgot the buns, right? DoorDash, get it all delivered without missing any of the game and any of the fun. Kick back at kickoff, at halftime, whatever it is. You don't have to run out and do it. Let DoorDash do it. And if you're thinking, you know what, let's go a little bigger, all your favorite restaurants and stores, from retail to grocery, they're right there on the app, so you can shop everything you need to get game day ready. Local places. I like the Santora's wing place near my house. Order wings from there all the time, and DoorDash is the way that you can do it. And you can get up to 50% off, up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and put the code LOCKED23 in, right? The code again is LOCKED23, and you're going to get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order on the DoorDash app. Terms apply. Go eat, go watch the game, and don't even get off the couch.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thanks for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday, free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, let's jump back into these Show Me Something. And this next one, I'm trying to will this, Travis. Show me something, rookie running back Zach Evans. I want to see a Zach Evans coming out party. I was listening to the Sean McVay press conference, and I really bent my ear when he said this. Zach Evans is another guy that I'm intrigued to see if he gets an opportunity to get some carries towards the second half of the season. He's gotten better and better in practice, and then let's see if he gets an opportunity to get out there. So, I've been pushing for Zach Evans. I like my rookies. We've hit on a lot of these rookies, and it makes me wonder, maybe they were slow playing this because they wanted him to have some more tread on the tires to be able to withstand an entire season. Because typically it's almost a redshirt year for some of these rookies when the Rams draft them. Maybe they were stashing him a little bit. So far this year, just 4 attempts for 10 yards this season. If he's not able to go, you're going to see Hendo and Royce Freeman. But I think Zach Evans, man, I'd love to see a nice little coming out party for him.
I like the theory in as an idea, but the problem is they're so thin at that position that they think about what's happened, right? Cam Akers didn't work out. He gets sent to Minnesota, and then Kyron Williams comes in and plays pretty well, and then he gets hurt, and he's been on the IR since he finally got going. Same thing for Ronnie Rivers. Ronnie Rivers gets hurt as well. He's been gone. They pulled Darrell Henderson out of a flag football league to come in and be their running back. Royce Freeman gets elevated from the practice squad. So if the plan was to save him, it seems like the need to implement him in the game might have happened before now. The word intriguing that Sean McVay used, like to hear you say it, D-Mac, is intriguing to me, because when I say I'm intrigued by something, it's a polite way of saying not interested, right? It's intriguing, but we're gonna not do it. And I think I am fairly fluent in Sean McVay-ese at this point and kind of trying to read between the lines at what he does. I think that we're probably closer to seeing him. I think we're probably closer to the point of, okay, we don't, I don't want to say not try to win the games, because that's never the case, but we're more of an evaluation mode, and you're not quite in a, desperate to win mode. So I think, depending on what happens this week, that's next week, the week after that, whenever it becomes clear that the Rams do not have a shot at the playoffs, I think a player like Zach Evans is going to get a shot to play.
Okay, so pop my Zach Evans balloon. I appreciate that. Shatter my Zach Evans dreams. Okay, we'll see a steady dose of Hendo and Freeman. It's all good. Yeah. Maybe someday. So last, show me something. We're going to get into these keys here real quickly. The secondary has not performed well of late. Last 4 weeks, they have a lot of 109.5 rating. They haven't performed well. Akella Witherspoon, he did a nice job against the Packers, but for the most part, still working some stuff out. You got Kobe Durant going to the outside. You got Quentin Lake there in the slot. Need this secondary to step up big with the Seahawks team, with Akella, with DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith and Jigba, all these weapons that they have. It's going to be a big test for them.
The Rams could use a game where the defense kind of helps them out in more than just that we're keeping you in it sort of way, which, but generally speaking, that's great. Just let the offense do what they need to do. The defense give up your, 14, 17, 20 points. You got a pretty good chance to win it. Rams offense is struggling to get more than those 20 points. So what would be nice is if the Rams can find a way to score on defense, find a way to score in special teams, find a way to take the ball away on a short field and give the Rams offense a little bit of a leg up. I'm with you. I would like to see more than just good enough. I would like to see something that's a little bit above and beyond that. Maybe put some points on the board, because they've been really hard to find. The problem is, and again, this comes back to the crux of the issue with this team going all the way back to the beginning of the season. Who? What other than Aaron Donald, who is going to do that? Maybe it's Byron Young with a strip sack. Maybe it's Russ Yeast with a pick six or whatever. But you're asking a lot out of some guys. There isn't a Jalen Ramsey out there. There's not a Bobby Wagner out there. The talent level on that side of the ball has gone down. Somebody needs to step up.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned who is going to step up. Pretty much their best defensive player, really Byron Young outside of Aaron Donald this season, but also Ernest Jones. And Ernest Jones is going to be back, and that's the next big key. Can you neutralize this run game? You didn't have Ernest Jones against the Packers. The Packers ran for 184 yards. This Seattle Seahawks offense is at their best when they're pounding the rock with Kenneth Walker. You got Zach Charbonnet, UCLA Bruin. Do your thing, but not against us this weekend. And then hopefully they can neutralize that run, and it'll help them really win this game.
Yeah, they're going to have to get a little bit from everybody, right? You're going to have to get something from the D-line. You're going to have to get something from Ernest Jones, who's back from injury. And, this isn't I don't mean to be disrespectful to Geno Smith, but I didn't buy it last year, and I don't buy it this year. I just don't think he's a really scary guy. When you look around the rest of the league, and there are guys that are on teams that are mediocre, but they still scare you to death. Like Justin Herbert, right? He walks out there like, oh boy, this guy is going to absolutely tear us apart. Geno Smith doesn't feel like that. Just play solid, make a play when you get an opportunity, turn it over once or twice, give yourself that short field like I mentioned. I'm not on my heels like, oh man, Russell Wilson for a really long time was a really scary guy when you went to go play the Seattle Seahawks. I know that it's kind of changed for dangerous in Denver since then, but Geno Smith doesn't really freak me out all that much. Let's go get him.
Yeah, that's the biggest key, too. Make it to where we're seeing Geno the Jet, not Geno the Seahawk from last season. And I think the big key for that is you got a lot of Seahawks fans. They're upset about the play calling. You're seeing a lot of long developing routes outside the hash marks. You're not seeing a lot of crossing routes that they're calling for. And the big key is if you can find some way to get pressure, that would go a long way. Entering the Week 10 match against the Commanders, the Seahawks are averaging 29 points on offense when Geno was pressured less than 40% of the time. When it's more than that, they're averaging 14.6 per game. So if you can get some pressure on Geno Smith, whether it be a sack from Aaron Donald, Byron Young getting the quarterback, Michael Hoyt, someone finding a way to get to the football and being disruptive, that's going to go a long way to making this Seahawks offense discombobulated, and hopefully we'll see a repeat of what happened in Week 1. Now, when it comes to predictions, Travis, I got the first week after the bye, saying you got a chance, I got to pick the Rams in this one just because Sean McVay owns Pete Carroll. Matthew Stafford is back. It's the healthiest this Rams team has been in quite some time. They know their season is on the line. Travis, on Monday, we're either going to be talking about the playoffs or the draft, and we're only in November. That is what's at stake. I've got the Rams winning 27-23.
I'm going to pick this one with my heart, and not so much my brain. I would love to have another 2 or 3 or 4 weeks of talking about, hey, is that little sliver of hope still there? Can you find a way to maybe hang with the Baltimore Ravens? That'd be a fun conversation to have. But none of it happens if you don't win on Sunday against the Seahawks. So I have a hard time seeing the Rams scoring 27 points. I just don't see it. So I think if they're going to win this game, it's probably somewhere in the high teens, low 20s. So I'll take a 21-20 squeaker where the Rams win the game.
That's why he's the people's champ. That's what I respect about that. Now, I will say, too, only time they've scored 30 or more points this year was week 1 against the Seahawks. They're a different Seahawks team at this point, but hopefully that's the case. But that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. And as always, you can follow the people's champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, at Travis Rogers. And until next time, whose house is Locked On Rams house?